What's up, guys? Welcome back. Amazing RC. It's your boy Brian. And as you can see, well, we kind of have a six-wheel drive man truck Eachines EAT01 in front of us. Guys, this one is going to a very good friend of mine, Gary. Hopefully by the time I'm done with it, it won't look like this. The reason I'm getting a hold of you guys in the upgrade phase here is because while I have this torn apart, I can kind of show you some of the really cool upgrades that we're going to start installing right now. One of which is this huge 370 motor with massive transmission. Now, once I got this in place, I knew I had to make a video. Reason being was how easy it was to get it installed. Once I got basically a couple screws out and we got our cab off, I was able to remove, I want to say, 4 screws, one each in the front on this side, one each front and back on this side. And what that did was it allowed me to actually remove the whole front steering and wheel mechanism. Once I got rid of this and got rid of the screws in the side, which came out early on to take this off, it allowed me to slide out all of the internal bits, basically revealing our ladder chassis here. I've yet to have a build where you can just start sliding things in and out. So once I got the motor and transmission put inside, I can start mapping things out. And I immediately ran into a huge problem. And it was my drive shafts didn't reach the drive shaft to the transmission. And the reason being is because I had this plate in the wrong place. And I got all in a frantic mess, and I'm like, oh no. So I ran to the stock motor in my dismay, and I said, okay, well, maybe this drive shaft in the stock motor is longer. And I held it up next to it, and I said, ooh, it is. It's longer by a solid 1/4 of an inch. Maybe that's my issue. So I set the stock motor to the side, and I went back to this problem here. Once I looked at it, I noticed that the screw holes weren't lined up, and I noticed that this chassis plate actually slid back quite a bit further and locked into place. Once I did that, I thought, well, there's probably my 1/4 of an inch. So I got everything lined back up, and I was exactly right. Everything is going to work perfectly. The drive shafts are going to fit right in on the stock drive shaft from the transmission to our upgraded motor. But then I noticed something. I noticed that the drive shaft inside our upgraded motor and transmission, I noticed that its diameter was completely smooth and round. And I remember that when we built our C24, that posed a problem. We had these really great all-metal drive shafts, and we had these installed with this killer nothing but torque motor. And I'm pretty sure it was due to the lack of size to these little itsy bitsy grub screws. I mean, just to give you an idea of the difference between the size of the grub screw between these aftermarket drive shafts and the stock drive shafts to this six-wheel drive by Eachines. Here are the Allen wrenches for each. I can't even grab the one for this grub screw. It's so tiny. But here are the Allen wrenches that go to the corresponding grub screws, and obviously this one is itsy bitsy teeny weeny. So you're not getting a lot of equity going on a very smooth surface. You got a lot of wheels, a lot of torque that it's attempting to drive through. So I was very apprehensive by using these. We decided long before we got into this that we were going to use the stock drive shafts over here. And I'm glad I did, because the stock drive shafts on the Eachines over here are huge. Their grub screws are big and beefy. I was very excited. However, when I had the issue over here, I did take notice that the drive shaft, longer drive shaft, also had something very interesting in it. It had a really cool feature that we might use on this build. It had flat spots in the front and rear of the drive shaft. And what that does is it allows this grub screw to sit 90 degrees, bam, flat, not on a perfectly smooth diameter or surface, getting almost no equity at all. So there are 3 screws in the end of this transmission. Now this motor and transmission were supposed to go directly over to our UC C24 build. It's already got a pretty wicked stance over here, so you know we've been working on this as well. But I'm not going to lie, that by next video I may have dug this drive shaft out. We may use it on this build. Now that would kind of take away from, you know, the possibility of both builds working perfectly, but at this point, this is the one I'm worried about. So we may utilize this drive shaft. We'll keep you posted on that. As for where we're at now, I've got the motor right about where it needs to go. I can tell that my drive shafts both reach, so everything looks perfect. That brings us to our steering servo. Now the stock steering servo that comes in this is a fully proportional steering servo. Now if you remember, we had this ESC receiver combo and that comes with this. Now the wonderful part about this one, as opposed to the one that comes in the C24 stock, not the kit but the RTR version, is that this has a spot for a proportional steering servo, which is wonderful because you need that. So this little combination are going to go right over here into our C24, seeing as how they lived there already for a short period of time. Now, when I first saw this setup, this steering servo was covered by this little servo kind of plate cover thing. Well, it kind of gives you this idea that it's a little bit larger than it is. Well, I'm glad that it is, because it made me buy the larger steering servo. This one is a regular, I guess it's a mini steering servo. There is a micro, which changes your differential locking in the TRX4 as well as your first and second gear. Now, I was going to use one of those prior to this, but it wasn't the right size. So once I got the cover off this little guy, I noticed that the steering servos were really close to the same size. So I was very excited. I got this steering servo all put in here nice and neat, and I noticed 2 things right away. Number one, there's going to be a little tiny bit of customization. I'm going to get the old Dremel out. We're going to take just a hair off the corner in here, and that should allow this steering servo to sit right down inside. Now, once I get that in there, I think just a little bit of a modification to this cover, and believe it or not, I think the cover will even go on, and that's going to allow me to put 2 screws in the top of this thing and bolt it down nice and tight. Now, if for some reason this doesn't work, that doesn't mean we're out for this steering servo. All I'm going to do is pop 2 holes on either side of this thing and zip tie it right to the chassis. So either way is going to work perfectly. This way is going to look much better. So that's where we're going to try first. Now, once I get these 2 installed where they're going to go and locked down tight, that brings us to our Dumbo RC X4. Now, we're going to use this X6F receiver here. We're going to get this tucked away inside. It's probably going to sit somewhere over here. Remember, we've got an ESC coming separate as well. Now, this ESC that I've got coming from Banggood.com is perfect for this build. It's extremely small, but it allows for our regular receiver, our regular steering servo, and our big beefy motor. So the only thing I may have to do is swap out this motor plug for one of the little red plugs that'll fit into the ESC up here. Now, once I get all of this put together, that's going to allow me to run my Dumbo RC X4. Well, one of my favorite things that can be applied to one of these transmitters is the on-off switch. Now, Super jacked about putting lights all over this thing. Remember, we just got a box, 375 LEDs from Banggood. We've got another 300 coming that are clear. I'm going to light this thing up like a Christmas tree. So basically, guys, that's where we're at with our upgrades right now. I've got a ton of work to do, so be sure to check out our next video that involves this specific build. I'm going to get all these electronics in. By then, we should have our ESC, so we're going to show how we got that installed as well. I'm super jacked that we got started with this specific model here because it's got a bunch of really super high-end parts between the drive shafts with the super enlarged grub screws, the stock motor with the drive shaft with the flat ends on it. I mean, even this $40 upgraded motor and transmission does not have a drive shaft like that. We've got full differentials, open differentials. I mean, these things are found in, higher end hobby grade, RCs for much, much more money. So starting off with this $50, $60 truck was a great idea. I tell you what, Gary, I don't know what you got being built on your end, but you are going to be blown away once you see what we are finished with over here. Guys, super jacked. You chose to hang out with us today. Until next time, it's Brian. It's Amazing RC. We'll get you guys another really cool video very, very soon.